Okay, now our session's supposed to start. Don't worry, we try to bring you another very excellent performance. So our topic is advancing the energy transition toward climate talk in Asia and the Pacific. I'm Jack Huang. I'm the consultant for the United Nations, as well as the COP advisor for Staff United Farm. So welcome you to join us. And today we have so many excellent speakers. We have Dom Kim, the policy analyst for Solution for Our Climate. Thank you for joining us. We also have Mika Obayashi, the director of Renewable Energy Institute. Thank you for coming. We also have Stuart White, the professor, director, Institute for Sustainable Future, University of Technology, Sydney. Thank you for joining us. And we also have Zhao Jiawei, Dr. Zhao, research director, Taiwan Climate Action Network. So the first, it's my honor to invite the Mrs. King, who can bring us the keynote speech. So the floor will be yours.
Test.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us to our great event, Advancing the Energy Transition Toward Climate Targets in Asia and the Pacific. So I'm Dawn Kim. I'm policy analyst in renewable energy permitting, especially in solar power sector. I'm from Solutions for Our Climate. SFOC, we are a non-profit organization based in Seoul, South Korea. We have our colleagues, almost of us based in Seoul, South Korea, but we have our colleagues across the region, including Japan and Taiwan. So we are focusing in our Korean market, but also we are very interested in, and we are really doing, expanding our work to other Asian regions. So, and our organization is basically to reduce greenhouse gases and keep the temperature rise under 1.5 degree since our industrialization. And we have a lot of programs such as climate finance, power market and grid, renewable energy permitting, steel, gas, shipping, and so on. And we are to leverage our work through the network, including communication, comms, organization, communication with other organizations, and we want to do a lot of collaboration with them, domestically and internationally as well. And we have a lot of work on our police engagement and international communication as well. So yeah, that will be our brief introduction for our organization, SFOC. So if you're interested in, you can just get a little QR code here and get access to our websites. And also we have our great production team in our organization, including many interesting videos and our contents through Instagram and our YouTube. So please keep us in your attention, please. So, yeah. So here I am. Thank you so much for inviting me as a panelist in this session. I'm really glad to share our team's work on our renewable energy permitting. So why renewable energy permitting? Because everyone is saying about just this energy transition, about the grid, the people, biodiversity, but I don't think a lot of people are talking about siting and permitting. Well, we all knew that we need renewable energy for our green environment, for our environment and our next generation, for creating your job and facing our fossil fuels. But where and how? And when it comes to installation of utility such as offshore wind turbines and PV panels, well, we need development and we need the land to install. So the transition to renewable energy it has to happen here. But to truly safeguard our planet, we to speed up and to quickly unlock the full potential of renewable energy, we all need to solve major bottleneck in efficient permitting process and siting regulations. So let me give you a little bit of context of our work. For example, for one offshore wind to be installed in Korea, one development have to go through 28 different agencies of government to get a full a range of permitting. So it is very inefficient. And for developers, imagine that. For them, time is money. It takes time. If it takes time, it takes money. So the time consuming time for developing a project is very crucial for fast, rapid deployment of renewable energy, as you can imagine. So we are basically trying to streamline the permitting process. Well, if I'm speaking easy, we want to make it simple and easy for developers, for them to be able to get into the site and just go through a simple, efficient way of permitting process. So we need to do like that. Government must streamline the permitting process, ensure that communities are engaged from the start of the renewable energy projects as well. When it comes to development of a utility such as PV farm, in Korea, they all know that we need renewable energy, but they don't want PV farm installed near their house. There's kind of NIMBY. I mean, well, on the rooftop or anywhere else, it's okay. But in front of my house or near in our community, I don't like it. It's very common underground. So what states did, I hope everyone has this flyer. We have in Korea siting regulation on solar PV. It is basically this site separation distance regulation basically require PV farm to be installed a certain distance away from residentials or in the road. I think it's okay for everyone. Yes. But it's up to 1 kilometer. Imagine that, 1 kilometer away from a residence and the road. This is basically from the lack of capacity of state government. They cannot handle all the permission inquiries on their level, so they just they kind of accepted this regulation. Then you don't have to work that much because it's all the areas due to this regulation is kind of banded for installation of solar panels. So basically, we are focusing this regulation as an urgent homework for us to mitigate and abolish in Korea, South Korea, for better and much faster deployment of solar energy in Korea. So there were a guideline by the government that this could be mitigated by 100 meters from only from the residence, and it has impact of 3 times more potential land for solar energy farm. And according to the study, and mitigation of this regulation has impact of almost 2 gigawatts of solar farm. Well, it's technical estimation. It's not gonna be happen like in real world that it's automatically 2. But yes, it has a tremendous impact for solar energy deployment. So we wanna. It's one of the main regulations we want to tackle. We see as a very urgent bottleneck for solar energy farm to be installed. The Minister of newly launched Minister of Climate, Energy and Environment has shared a 100 gigawatts renewable deployment by 2030 in Korea. It is actually 25-fold increase compared to the under 4 gigawatts as of 2023. It is a huge difference between our goal and reality. Then mitigation of this regulation has a huge impact as we can see. And revising the existing siting regulation will be the key to enabling on-the-ground implementation, ultimately realizing their 2030 target. So I think we can move on to offshore wind in Korea. Basically, we have very poor implementation, deployment in South Korea as well. One of the obstacles we have now is military consultation. Military permitting of offshore wind is quite a big, huge hallmark for us. Military consultation is the key bottleneck in deployment of offshore wind in South Korea. As of August of 2025, over 25 gigawatts of projects await their review. Just to be reviewed, all the projects are waiting for their review, and they just stopped. And as I was talking previously, for developers, time is money. And what if they have to just wait for long lifetime for just for their review? They are not giving them approval or not. They're not giving the fast or with the timeline answer. So for developers, it's very risky to get into the permitting process in South Korea. So, and this projects waiting for military consultation is over 24 gigawatts, and this number exceeds the nation 2030 target of 14.3 gigawatts. So it is a tremendous bottleneck in offshore wind as well. And the Ministry of National Defense currently limits turbine heights to 500 feet, which is about 152 meters. But this number is also very outdated because this is the global average of 2012. So they require the turbine heights they want a short turbine. So a more efficient and effective discussion aimed at balancing offshore wind and development and national security will be important, especially as we have Offshore Wind Promotion Act. We move towards implementation in next year, March. This special act will try to streamline the complicated permitting process, and gonna do sort of government-led maritime spatial planning and a one-stop approval system. So there's so much discussion behind this, and also we are seeing the projects not applicable this special act, which is developed before this act. then they cannot get a benefit from this updated act and regulation process. So we are also tackling that the existing projects has to be they have to be included in very effective way and fast way for the more simple and effective permitting system. So for SFOC, we do provide the latest research and bring together policymakers and experts from around the world to establish a robust foundation for the swift, systematic adaptation of renewable energy. We do this by informing decision-making all around laws and regulations around solar and wind siting and permitting. Well, for now, our permitting work is very concentrated in South Korea, but we are very interested in expand our work to Japan, Taiwan, and other regions in Asia. Especially, I have to start my work from next year about agrivoltaic PV in South Korea, which is government has not yet have a legal framework for installation of agriculture PV in South Korea, which I really want to learn about Japanese market. So yes, they are main bottlenecks and permitting issues we are tackling as SFOC. So for more implementation of better permitting framework in South Korea. So thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any interested in our recent work, there's a QR code as well in the back of our flyer about our solar power siting regulation on solar power and military permitting for offshore wind. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kim, and thank you for your sharing, especially on the renewable energy and how exactly we can achieve the 1.5 degrees C under the Paris Agreement. I think that's very important, and as you keep emphasizing, regulation, policy, and cooperation, that's the keys. So next, I would like to invite our next keynote speaker, the Professor Stuart White, the Director, Institute for Sustainable Future, University of Technology, Sydney. So we would like to invite him to give us more speech. The floor is yours, Doctor.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the organisers for the opportunity to be speaking to you today. And I wanted to run through some a description of the energy situation in Australia, both historical and up to date, and also looking at some challenges, but also looking at some opportunities. But first, I'll just introduce our institute. The Institute for Sustainable Futures is part of the University of Technology, Sydney. And we work across the areas that you can see here. And the thing to note is that climate change connects everything. It connects water, it connects business, economies and governance, which is where we do our work in sustainable finance. It connects energy, obviously, and it connects circular economy, such as resource stewardship. So climate change permeates all aspects of the economy, and it certainly permeates all aspects of our work. There'll be a QR code for the Institute at the end of this presentation. So I also just wanted to pause briefly in the presentation to highlight, and you will have received this, and if you don't have one, I've got some in the front row here, which is about some of the work we do on 100% renewable energy strategies for different countries and regions in the world. And I thought I would mention this. There's a QR code on the back of this postcard. I don't propose to go through the details of the One Earth climate model, but it is widely used for some of the planning for 1.5 degree future. and particularly with working out the finance that's needed to achieve the 1.5 degree future in different countries and in different sectors of the economy. And we've done, in Southeast Asia, we've done this exercise for Vietnam, for example. We've done it for a number of countries across the world, including for the EU 27 countries, as well as the Pacific, and for Australia, obviously. So I would commend you to have a look at that model, but again, I wanted to give you a broader introduction to the Australian energy context rather than focus on the One Earth climate model, because you can look up the details yourself. So the first thing to note is that Australia has been built, its modern economy has been built on low-cost and abundant fossil fuel energy, and in fact we've been one of the major income for the country has been the export of coal historically, both metallurgical and steaming coal, and that obviously is decreasing, but the gas resources in Australia are significant, probably second only to Qatar, and we're a significant exporter still, and plan to be still further, of liquefied natural gas, which is of course one of the problems associated with meeting global targets, even if they don't necessarily appear on Australia's balance sheet. So these historical subsidies, historical exports of fossil fuel have set the tone for the Australian economy and have made it very difficult for some of the energy policy changes that we need to make. The other thing that's been significant in the history of energy is the national electricity market deregulation in the 1980s, which included some privatisation and the separation of the generation, transmission, distribution and retail parts of the electricity system. So that's been a major factor, and we'll return to that in the discussion. The other thing is the renewable energy target, which has been a significant success, as we'll see in a moment, in terms of supporting and financially providing financial incentive support, and in fact a market for the production of renewable energy, both large scale and rooftop solar, and that's been extraordinarily successful. And indeed, pretty much all the coal electricity generating plants will be shut down in Australia by about 2035. So they're getting very old, they're getting very unreliable, and as we'll see, the renewable energy percentages increase significantly. However, there has been a significant political contestation of this, and that's caused a lot of uncertainty in the market historically. At the moment, we're in a phase where there's more certainty, but this has been an issue in Australia with literally governments have fallen on the issue of energy policy and climate change. Probably 3 or 4 prime ministers have gone because of those two policy factors. So this has been a factor that we've needed to work out. So I just wanted to give a brief update on the climate targets. Obviously these are very up to date because we've only just submitted recently our NDC, but Australia is a signatory to the Paris Agreement, so to net zero by 2050, and is committed, or already was committed, to a 43% reduction by 2030 on 2005 figures, and has just recently in the NDC 3.0 committed to 62 to 70% reduction by 2035 on 2005 figures. These are quite a stretch, but possible. They're certainly technically possible, they're certainly economically possible. Whether in policy terms, and this we'll pick up on Dawn Kim's presentation here, is a key question. We have a commitment to 82% renewables by 2030, which is part of that target, and sector plans have been developed for a range of different sectors, including obviously the energy sector, to define a pathway. And there's strong dependence in those sectors and in these targets for the electricity sector doing the hard work, and also sequestration in the land use sector. A lot of assumptions about how much carbon can be absorbed in the land use sector. some of which are probably not well founded. So just to talk about some of the achievements that we've made, renewables now provide 40% of electricity, so it's quite significant, and it grows every month and every year. And rooftop photovoltaics, rooftop solar systems have been an amazing success story because of the renewable energy target, and we're now one of the world's highest adoption on a per capita basis, on a per roof basis, of solar PV. And you can see the figures there, 4.2 million systems, and there's probably about 7 million homes in Australia, and a significant capacity in gigawatts, and it's 13% of the total electricity is from rooftop PV. And most of that occurs behind the meter, so it reduces the net demand on the system, and we'll see a diagram of that later. Electric vehicles, Australia had a very slow start to uptake of electric vehicles. We do like our big petrol and diesel gas guzzling vehicles, but recently there's been a significant uptake as the prices have come down and the availability of charging in the community has gone up, so they're now 13% of sales. And household batteries had a very slow start and typically were 10 kilowatt hour systems, but recently the government has provided a rebate or a discount for household batteries, and we've seen, as you can see there, a huge number of batteries, 85,000 in the first half of this year, up 200% year on year. So we're seeing a massive uptake of household batteries to complement the solar photovoltaic systems. And the energy productivity of industry and households in the whole economy has improved 24% over the past decade. However, I should say that's from a fairly low base. We have a very inefficient, we have had a very inefficient economy because of the cheap coal-fired electricity. So just to talk about some of the challenges, and this picks up on my colleague Dawn Kim's presentation, we do have social license issues for grid-scale solar, for large-scale solar and wind, particularly offshore wind. There's been strong opposition to some offshore wind proposals and onshore wind, and even some large battery storage and transmission infrastructure. These are being worked through, but it has caused significant delays on the large-scale transmission grid-connected systems in Australia. So this is where it becomes really important for the distributed energy resources, for the consumer energy resources, to pave the way and to fill the gap during that delayed period. This is a very important point, and a quite neglected point in the energy policy scenario, not just in Australia, but pretty much everywhere that you hear presentations. The neglect of the distributed energy resource space. So the challenge is that with the rapid shift to renewables, in some cases there are sort of technical issues of the grid, the power quality, the grid quality, and regulatory issues about connection to the grid, because we're basically shifting the system from a few centralised generators to a system where there are millions of generators generating on the distribution system, not on the transmission system. So it's reversing the flows and making it a much more complex system. Now, all of these are technically possible to solve, but we do need to make sure that the regulations and the technical standards keep up with the evolution of renewable systems. And you can see here in this diagram, this is a prediction for South Australia. This is current for South Australia, and it shows the net demand in the middle of the day. So South Australia is pushing towards 100% renewables. This is where we hope that the COP31 will be held in Adelaide. And you can see that the predictions are that it goes negative. We quite often see negative prices in the middle of the day. And in fact, the government has just introduced a requirement for retailers to offer 3 hours of free electricity in the middle of the day because of this phenomenon. So the other challenges which we're starting to see are that there's been a limited investment in energy efficiency, demand flexibility. People often don't realise that energy efficiency is the cheapest way to provide energy, just by saving it, and that demand flexibility, the cheapest way to provide capacity in the system, is to use demand flexibility to shift the load to this part of the day and to reduce it in this part of the day through smart appliances, through batteries, through a range of industrial and commercial flexibility. So this is where we talk about mobilizing or orchestrating the distributed energy resources, because if you have 5 million different devices on the network which you need to orchestrate in order to even out this curve, then you need to work out a way to orchestrate that technically. And we also have a problem of the legacy of the gas infrastructure distorting policy making. So we have governments who are unprepared to push for electrification, which is the only way we'll get to 100% renewables, because there is a gas system that's had a lot of money put into it, and gas companies that have a lot of lobbying power in order to solve this problem. So we need to electrify and to make sure that we're not putting more gas on the system. So nearly coming to the end, I just wanted to briefly talk about opportunities for the future and where we go from here. The first one is we need to tap into demand flexibility. This is the cheapest way to provide new power capacity. And some estimates, and Australia is a relatively small country, so 3 to 18 billion is a significant saving that we can make from deferred investment in infrastructure and from reducing the cost of generation. So we need to absolutely maximise, and some of you will have heard presentations from Octopus Energy in the UK, for example, who have really pioneered some of these methods. We need to retrofit and improve the efficiency of the 7 million homes in Australia. There's just an asset that's just sitting there. People are suffering from either discomfort in terms of temperature, from higher power bills than they need to, and we could improve all of that, save greenhouse emissions, reduce costs, and make a profit from that. But we just need to make sure that we set the policy rules so that that can happen. We need to extend the rooftop solar to commercial industrial, partly because of the renewable energy target applying only to homes and only to small photovoltaic systems. It's biased in favour of those, whereas there are very large roofs in storage areas, industrial, commercial premises, which could actually provide much more energy. So we need to make sure that those are captured. Vehicle to grid, which is the bringing together the transport system in 100% battery electric vehicles with the grid system, is an emerging issue that will transform the electricity industry, not just in Australia, but through Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. So we're just seeing the start of this with some trials in Australia, and we're about to roll out, and we're involved with research in all of these things I've talked about. We're about to roll out a large trial of several hundred cars in Australia, which will be charged bi-directional, so we'll be able to solve that curve of being able to provide energy back into the grid from the vehicle in the evening, during the evening peak, when the power price is very high and the payback time is very high. We have one of those at our household, and we've been able to make $300 in a single day by providing power back into the grid from a 62 kilowatt hour battery. So this will become widespread probably in about 3 to 5 years, and it will completely transform the industry, because people won't, if they have a car, if they need a car, then that will be both their battery for their solar as well as a vehicle. So in our household's case, we don't need a car because we use a bicycle, but we bought a car for the battery and we got a car for free. So it's very handy. We also need to look at providing consumer choice, repricing and market engagement. So the virtual power plants have been not so successful in Australia. People are not signing up to virtual power plants because they would much prefer to have the choice themselves about where and how their energy and their battery is used. Testing. Cool. Thank you. I've nearly done. Yeah, so consumer choice is really important because we've, as I say, we've seen that people are not keen to have others like the electricity company control their battery or their appliances. So we do need to have a system that enables us to orchestrate those millions and millions of distributed energy resources. The other opportunity in Australia is that we have vast space. This is one of the differences with Korea, where we don't have a problem with 1 kilometre setbacks, but it means that we've got a huge opportunity to put photovoltaics and indeed wind farms in places where they're less likely to disturb other people, and therefore export both the power, and there are many proposals for exporting power through Indonesia to Singapore and Asia, or export the materials that are made from that power, such as green ammonia, green iron, and green aluminium. So this is a huge economic opportunity, and if you go down to the wharf here at the Belém, you can see a ship that's moored there, which is using ammonia, green ammonia produced from renewable energy for the power for the ship, as part of the iron ore industry in Australia. And of course there are other sectors. We're talking here about the energy transition, but of course we can't neglect the fact that if we were to solve tomorrow 100% renewable, maximise efficiency, 100% renewable mobility through electric vehicles, we would still not meet 1.5 degrees because of the methane emissions from ruminants that we eat and so on. So we absolutely need to pay attention to the other parts of the economy. Australia is certainly not necessarily paying enough attention to those, but globally we need to pay attention to those non-energy emission sources. So just to close, as I say, there's a QR code there for the Institute website, which will contain information about all the projects that I've spoken about in broad terms today. And if there are any questions, please let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. White. Thank you for bringing us a very interesting topics from Australia. So after the Korea, after Australia, now we are going to listen some ideas and experience from Taiwan. So please welcome the Dr. Zhao Jiawei, the Research Director, Taiwan Climate Action Network. So Dr. Zhao, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me move that a little bit. Hello everyone, I'm Jiawei Zhao, Research Director of Taiwan Climate Action Network, which is a joint platform for 5 local NGOs in Taiwan. We are focused on the carbon pricing issue, industry transition issue, renewable energy development, and the local climate action. So when we talk about the energy transition in the Asia and the Pacific, actually there are some very similar challenges, like between Taiwan and Korea and Japan. We are facing a lot of the NIMBY issues, social license issue around the renewable energy. And in the other aspect, that actually Taiwan are the key consumer for the oil, for the gas and coal from Australia. So that's why maybe we are keeping the tie for those kind of fossil fuel majors. They can still have a lot of financial power to hinder the progress of the electrification. So that's why we have those kind of panel for today, to have some kind of like a joint discussion about what's the another way forward. So as for Taiwan, we've been talking about the reason that we are trying to push for the energy transition. The first thing is the climate target. Taiwan, our government, we have announced that our target for the 2030s to reduce the emission to 28% below the 2005, and for the 2035, 38% below the 2005. So it's a little bit slower compared to what the Australia commit. But from our organization, because we are NGO, so we are quite critical about the government's target. So we are saying that if we want to make sure that this target will be 1.5 degree aligned, so our 2035 target should be improved to the 52% for year 2035. So this is also imply that because 90% of the emission in Taiwan are coming from the energy production and consumption. So without energy transition, we are not able to reach this kind of target. And another issue for Taiwan is that when we talk about energy transition, there's an important driver for Taiwan is about our industry competitiveness. As I have been involved in this issue for around almost 20 years. So almost 8 years ago, we will never heard that doing the renewable energy is good for the business. But nowadays, we find out that there's a strong demand for the renewable energy, especially for the government set out some kind of requirement to decarbonize the industry sector by asking the industry you should procure 50% of the renewable energy by year 2030, which is not so aggressive. But in the other aspect, there's already 37 Taiwanese companies they commit to the RE100, and there's around more than 120 companies who had committed to the RE100 had a branch in Taiwan. And the most important thing is that when we talk about Taiwan, everybody was thinking about a semiconductor. And the TSMC they consume around almost 9% of our total electricity in Taiwan. But they also commit to have to be the RE100 by year 2050 and the RE60 by 2030. But in the meantime, we find out a tragic thing is that almost 60% of the renewable energy that TSMC had procured right now are not happening in Taiwan. From the other countries, so that we identify this kind of loophole. But in the future, if we combine this kind of driver, we find out that the total renewable energy demand from the corporate rate will be increased to around 70 terawatt hour, which will be twice as the total supply that we have right now. And by year 2040, those demand will increase to will be double to the 140 terawatt hour. So that means there's an important driver for the energy transition. Why it's not working? Yeah, and another driver is that Taiwan is an island, so 96% of the energy was coming from the other countries. So if we can have a more aggressive in terms of energy transition, for example, like the government's target is that try to triple the share of the renewable energy between 2025 to 2035. Then they are looking into can reduce the share of the coal to 9%. But this is only can reach the emission reduction to 38%. So for us, we are talking about if we want to enhancing our reduction target to 52%, we need to try to answer to have the share of the renewable energy should be increased to around 60% by year 2035, and we have chance that we can phase out all the coal power plant not 2035 but around 2038. So that's what we see, and if we are pursuing this kind of target, we can reduce our dependency of the import energy from the 96%. We can reduce that to the 74% in a decade. So that can be totally comprehensively enhancing our energy resilience of Taiwan. But then we facing some kind of challenge. So if we want to achieve this kind of energy transition, we have to look in from the demand side and the supply side. For the demand side, we heard some good news, like the latest international scorecard for the energy efficiency. They rank Taiwan as number 7 in terms of the energy efficiency policy. We say it's a good thing because we are a little bit ahead from the South Korea and the Japan. So for us, we are a little bit wondering how this will happen. But the government also says that for our energy intensity, we had improved that by 4.6% for the past 5 years. So the global target is trying to double the energy efficiency improvement rate from the 2% to 4%. But now Taiwan is already reached this kind of target. but there's a reason behind that, because this kind of aggressive implement of the energy efficiency actually is not totally leads by the energy efficiency policy, but around 75% of that are due to because we see our petrochemical industry facing like the oversupply from China, so they lower their demand for the oil, so that leads to those kind of energy efficiency improvement. It's not actually we already implement a lot of the energy efficiency, so there's a room we need to be implement in the future. And as for the supply side, we are focused on the how can we achieve to make sure that the share of the renewable energy can reach 60% by year 2035. So that means that we need to increase the installation of the PV from the 50 gigawatt right now to the from the 15 gigawatt right now to the 50 gigawatt in a decade. So that means that we need to increase our solar energy by almost 3 gigawatt per year. And then for the offshore wind, we find out that the government already have an aggressive target. But this target and the project we see, we see a lot of delay, and then we also see this kind of slower learning curve for the offshore wind. So now we see a lot of the potential consumer for the offshore wind. They just complain that the price of the offshore wind project is just too high. It's just too high, so they complain about that. And as for the solar energy, we are facing a strong setback in terms of the permitting issue. Just yesterday in Taiwan, we have the EIA reform. Actually, we add a lot of additional requirement for the solar energy that will hinder the progress of the ground level solar energy development. And another, I would say, the rookie of the year around the energy transition in Taiwan is the geothermal. There's a lot of discussion around geothermal in Taiwan, and we are looking at if that's possible, they can achieve around 3 gigawatt by year 2035. So we have chance that we can make sure we can have the share of the renewable energy can be increased to 60%. But now we still see we are lack of the drawing capacity, and most of the solar geothermal energy, they are located in the indigenous community with their traditional territory. So we need to develop a benefit sharing scheme to make sure that they can there's an early engagement for the indigenous people. So that's challenging for our supply side. Then I will come to some interesting issues because a lot of are talking about AI. So in Taiwan, we are also talking about the AI might be hinder our progress of the energy transition because the government are thinking the electricity consumption from the data center will be increased by 8 times in the next 5 years. But we are seeing that this kind of estimation is a hype because we are using another kind of projection. We find out that it may be only doubled in the next 5 years. And the good news is that the government are setting out some new regulation for the data center, for the AI data center. They set out that they have to submit energy use plan, energy audit plan, and they set out a cap for the efficiency of the data center, and they set out a series requirement for the best available technology, but they did not. But the standard for the energy efficiency is too low. So this kind of the PUV cap can be strengthened. And there's lack of any requirement for the renewable energy procurement for those kind of new data centers. So those are the things we are seeing for the AI issue. But when we talk about AI, we have the major challenge for Taiwan is the component to support the AI development is the chip, is the semiconductor, because we find out that nowadays the semiconductor industry they become the second largest emitters of all the industry sector that's behind the petrochemical industry. And we find out that for the past few years, the TSMC leads to a lot of the increase in terms of the CO2 emission. And they are saying that 30% of the TSMC revenue will be AI related. If that will be continuing to this trend, that means that overall the share of the electricity consumption from the semiconductor will be increased to around 20% by year 2030, and that will lead to us, the government will fulfill this kind of demand by build out a lot of the LNG, because they say, although the TSMC, you are committed to the renewable energy, but a lot of the renewable energy you procure right now is not happening in Taiwan. We still need this LNG power plant to support your electricity demand. So that's a very crucial, a very important challenge for Taiwan in terms of our energy transition. And the last thing is that we are talking about social license, and we are seeing that a very challenging thing is that a sad trend is that we find out that the public support for the renewable energy will not increase over time, and even this year we find out that the public who support the renewable energy is higher than the people, the population who support the solar energy. And we already find out that there's a lot of the ad spending on the Facebook by those kind of anti-green group. The ad money they spend is 3 times more than the green energy supporters. So that's an issue we are quite worried about that. Yeah. So the way forward, we still we have to keep going, keep doing those working on the energy transition, because we see those key strategic drivers. So we first thing is that we have to solving the deadlock of the permitting issue with a smart EIA, because we see there's a lot of the requirement for the utility scale solar energy to pass through for the EIA, but we can set out kind of like a dedicated, tailor-made EIA requirement for those kind of projects, so it can be minimized the effect they was facing for the past years. And then we have seen that the semiconductor should focus on their energy efficiency improvement. They cannot just talking about the renewable energy takeoff. And the last one is that if we want to change the perception of the renewable energy, we want to earn back the social license of renewable energy, we need those corporate, those like the TSMC or even the NVIDIA, who was seen as a very important players in Taiwan. They should come and say nice thing about the renewable energy, by why we need those kind of renewable energy, because most of the time the public did not perceive that the renewable energy transition will be a necessity for those industry to be developed in Taiwan. So that's all I want to share with you. So thanks for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zhao. Thank you for your remarkable sharing regarding Taiwan. And also, we understand that each country has its own challenges and opportunities, from Korea, Australia, and Taiwan. Last but not least, I would like to invite our next keynote speaker, the Mika Obayashi, who is the director of the Renewable Energy Institute from Japan. So the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. So thank you very much for inviting me to present about Japan's challenges and enormous opportunities in the energy transition. I'm really happy to be here with our kind of neighboring countries, colleagues, and then I would like to talk about Japan's energy transition and regional collaboration. Then, is this how? Okay, so I just wanted to see the current situation, Japan in the world, that you can see that. Actually, Japan is in a transition phase of its energy transformation. The goal of climate neutrality is clear. Actually, that government submitted a law for the 2050 climate neutrality, but the pathway remains challenging. You can see that because Japan's mostly relying on the fossil fuel, about 70% of its energy, electricity. To change this, Japan is pursuing a multi-track strategy. One is, of course, expanding renewables, promoting energy efficiency, probably, and restarting some nuclear reactors. That's the government policy. And then among these, offshore wind and hydrogen have been identified as key pillars for Japan's next phase of energy growth. And then they are at the center of policy and investment priorities for the coming decades. So I just would like to see that what the government is doing and then the current status from now on. So you can see this is a kind of energy transition, cheapest power sources in 2024. Even in Japan, solar power became the cheapest electricity source in last year. So you can see the left side is the, I just needed to make it a cheapest source of, new build, solar, wind, coal and gas. But the right side is new build solar and wind versus existing coal and gas. So this right side shows the real energy transition, that if you want to have the new energy source, that it's better to just transform current existing coal and gas to the new solar and wind. Oh, sorry. And then this is a more like detailed power mix. I'm sorry the data looks like really old because Japanese government releasing the data is always like a 1 year later or something. So I only have the kind of fiscal year 2023. So it means like Japan's fiscal year starts from April. So this is data for the April 2023 to the March 2024, the most, updated one. And then that I just wanted to see you, this right graph, that it's a kind of a comparison before the Fukushima accident occurred 2011 to the last fiscal year's kind of a status. You can see the generation source only expanding is renewables. And then of course that there are some energy, electricity efficiency is going on because it's minus. But I have to say that the most of part probably brought from the renewable energy expansion, because solar energy on the rooftop solar, that it's a kind of a behind meter, so you cannot calculate as a kind of increase of the electricity here. So it is calculated as, the decrease of the electricity demand here. And this is renewable energy trends. Since Japan experienced the Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011, and then Japan introduced the German type of feed-in tariff scheme in 2012. And then that is just the starting of the real commercial scale of solar power implemented in Japan. So it's really likely surge that since 2012, in past 10 years, I have to say. And then Japan's renewable electricity is now like almost 23% to 25%. But solar energy contributed a lot. actually I could say that almost 100 gigawatt of solar PV already introduced that in past 13 years, something like that. But as a comparison, you can see that wind power is a very minor, and then it is still like a 6 gigawatt in Japan's electricity capacity. I have to say that. And then it's because that, of course, something is going wrong. 100 gigawatt of solar PV, and then 6 gigawatt of wind power. That something is really wrong, that I have to say, that it's mainly because of the structural difficulties for wind power getting into the power market, because Japan is basically that have the 9 different vertically integrated incumbent utilities. We introduced some unbundling, but in reality, it's not the kind of a real ownership unbundling, and still the big power companies own the generation and then transmission under the same company. So it is very difficult to for the renewable energy, especially the variable renewable energy, and especially the wind power, that to get into the grid. Okay. But Japan has the huge reason to increase our own domestic energy source, renewables, because, as I said, like Japan is really relying on the fossil fuel, but of course Japan doesn't have its own domestic fossil fuel resource, so we are exporting a lot of fossil fuel from other countries, that especially Australia, and then also Middle East, and then we are paying a lot of money for that importing fossil fuel. It is almost like 20 to 30 trillion yen annually. So it could be said like a 200 to 200 billion dollars or something like annually, and it's just paying, and then those monies are just vanishing, I have to say. So if those kind of huge amount of money is used for renewables, that's a future will be different. So I have to say is money is here on the table, and then we are just sending it to, for example, Australia, and then some Middle East countries, and so money is here. Which technology that we will try to expand? So the Japanese government NDC, that I have to say that it's a kind of a base of NDC. Japan's NDC is like almost 45% to 50% by 2030 reduction. And then it was like, excuse me, I have to check the real kind of a number. And then 60% by 2035. And 73% of reduction of greenhouse gases that by 2040. So it's based on I think that's from the level of 2013, when the emission was highest in Japan. So if you try to see that 73% of reduction, then that I have to say that it aims at almost complete decarbonization of the power sector in 2040. So we are challenging very impossible thing in the power sector, but the question is, which power sources will be chosen? So 73% reduction, and then at least the power sector has to be decarbonized by 2040, and then that's a government policy. And if we see the real energy scenario implementation by the Japanese government, that it's still that renewable just counted for 50 to 60% by 2040. So what else? There's still that they are thinking about fossil fuel as a power source, and then it is okay because Japan has a fantastic technology of CCS. So all the carbons will be, accumulated and, it will be stored on underground or sent to, I'm sorry, but Southeast Asian countries. CO2 will be sent. But anyway, so that's a kind of the current challenges and the plan of the Japanese government. So I think the complete decarbonization of the power sector is a very good, huge challenge and then a good challenge. But which power sources will be chosen is the problem. So for example, those are the two things that Japanese government is quite seeing. And at the time of Fukushima accident, we used to have 54 reactors. And then actually that about half of it already announced to decommission. And then currently the opened nuclear reactors, 15 reactors are active, but of course that it's not, it doesn't mean that necessary that they are online at the same time. But anyway, that 15 reactors got a permission and that reopened. But still, that there are some 10 or 20 reactors that they are waiting for the licensing to open the operation. But at the same time, that we have the huge, I mean, not the huge, but in the local area, there's still the big opposition against the nuclear power, because the nuclear power in Japan is becoming very old. And for example, this one. So the government has 20% of nuclear by 2040 still, but actually the utmost that it cannot be achieved by 2040 because the nuclear reactors in Japan is really becoming old and old, and then it is one of the reasons the area of the nuclear reactors that against to operate the older reactors. And still that I always say never-ending story of nuclear power, because it takes time to start the operation, and then even after they finish the operation, probably that operation lifetime is 40 to 50 years, and even after that, you have to take care of enormous amount of nuclear waste, including the spent nuclear fuel. And then also, Japan is focusing on ammonia, hydrogen as well. And then they are saying like ammonia will be co-incinerate at the coal-fired power plant. But actually that ammonia is quite expensive compared to other technologies. So it is very difficult to rely on those ones that I have to say. So what the energy source that we have to see is mainly that we are, of course, that the onshore wind is one of the things, but the offshore wind, in terms of that Japan have the huge sea area, we have the enormous potential of offshore wind, I could say. And in PV solar, we have installed that the 100 gigawatt already. So it's a kind of a huge, good, how can I say, the record for Japan, such as, you know, always claiming we are a very small island or something like that. So, but even we have already installed the 100 gigawatt, we have the huge opportunity. And then I'm thinking about, so is there anyone who has solar power in your house or own? Okay, thank you for that. But I always say, maybe you should have each solar power in your house, because solar power on your watch or on your calculator, you know, solar power can be installed everywhere. So it doesn't need the land, it needs the space. So if you think of the kind of a rooftop area space, or maybe it could be put like this, you know, the straight types of installation of solar power. This is a kind of a Hokkaido area, and then that's a glass run for cows. I'm sorry, lounge or something like that. I don't have the proper words, but usually this is the cows kind of taken care of. And then everywhere you can put the solar panel. And this is a kind of ugly solar. And those are like some are the kind of car roof solar. And then this is for windows or something like that. So we can put everywhere the solar power. And then next one is the offshore wind. This is more detailed that potential study, but you can see. So we have the almost like a 2,000 gigawatt of potential. Of course, that we don't need it much, not so much, but still, that's a kind of the status of Japan. So we think we could have more advanced that renewable energy integration into the Japan's system. This is our own scenario for 2035. We know that it's a huge challenge, but we are saying that 80% of renewables could be integrated by 2035. And this is our next scenario for the 2040, and it could be set like 90% of renewables in the power mix. So, but of course, that there are many challenges. One thing is grid connection, and then port and marine infrastructure. I mean that including the kind of a subsea cable, and then workforce and vessels, and environmental and the social acceptance is a challenge for that. I'm really sorry that I just skipped the slide. And then regarding the grid connection, you can see just an example. This is a Hokkaido and Tohoku area and a Kyushu area. And the Kyushu area is a southern part of Japan, and then rather has a good condition of solar power. And then, but you could see that some areas are not so much integrated. And then the Hokkaido area, it has a huge kind of potential for offshore wind, onshore wind, solar PV as well, but it's not so much well connected inside of the Hokkaido area, and then also demand center such as Tokyo here and then Osaka there. So it's we have some grid integration issue, and the result is here. This is a kind of a, you can just a little bit move. It's a kind of the curtailment status in our Kyushu area. Kyushu is the area, southern part, and then so many solar has been concentrated that you can see. And then the Kyushu Electric Power Company that has the nuclear power plant. So the nuclear is just providing the stable electricity as a load something. And then, but the solar will be curtailed. That is just abundant electricity. So not like Australia, we don't have the negative price. So the solar has to be just abundant electricity. But of course, it's almost 0 yen when the solar really has a surplus. But if we have the negative price and then integrated with the batteries, it could be a new business, right? So batteries can absorb the electricity from solar power, and then they can just support the electricity here instead of fossil fuel. So those are one of the challenges that we are seeing. So not only the grid system, but also the market structure. And then another difficulty is that Japan's renewables are still expensive. And then that it's more like that from the grid connection, that technological installation, that we have to pay for that. You can see this huge orange area that the Japanese developers are paying for just for grid connection. So that is one of the difficulties of grid. And then another difficulty is like off-takers' burden is very high. Even the offshore wind is quite, popular among off-takers, but still very expensive. So we should think of that how to change this situation. But there are opportunities that if we think of the floating offshore wind, as I said, that our potential will be really expanded. And then it could bring the industrial development and the regional revitalization. And then that I would like to propose that offshore wind in the Asia-Pacific region with a collaboration. So because that we have the shared goals and then complementary strengths, and also the opportunities for collaboration are vast. And the vision is that I have to say the Northeast Asian offshore wind corridor, maybe I would like to propose connecting innovation, industry, and clean energy. And then just example, this is a kind of a Korean floating offshore wind proposed site. It's just near the Japan-Korea median line. So why not that we do have the offshore wind here? I mean, that from the Japan side, it could be integrated with the interconnections with Korea and Japan. I know it's a very politically sensitive issue, but still, it's a good idea, isn't it? And then, that this is my proposal. Like the Japan, the energy transition needs regional strategy, especially for offshore wind. And then usually the European countries are regarded as the very advanced offshore wind energy policy. But I have to say, not only one country nor one company can be a success, reason of the success in the European countries. European-wide, each country compete and then make the cost down of offshore wind, and then they take its own role to play in the supply chains. So each country and the ports, even the ports has a different character. So it may be that in Japan, that together with other Asian nations, we could have such kind of regional collaborations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mika. Thank you for your super interesting sharing. Oh, it's unstable. Sorry, we lack of budget, so we can only have this stage. So next, I would like to invite every keynote speaker. We can join our panel discussion, especially after we have the so interesting topics after Korea, Australia, Taiwan, and Japan. Now we are going to give deeper, further discussion regarding all those expertise, how exactly we can advancing energy transition toward climate target in Asia and the Pacific. So that's welcome again, the Dr. Zhao Jiawei from Research Director, Taiwan Climate Action Network, and Dr. Stuart White, Director of Institution of Sustainable Future, University of Technology, Sydney, Mika Obayashi, Director of Renewable Energy Institute, and Doom Kim, the Policy Analyst, Solution for Our Climate from Korea. So thank you very much for joining us. So now, here are several questions. I would like to just open the floor and have your answer. So my first question, I will go with Dr. White first. So from your opinion, what's the 2 to 3, or as many as you would like to share, the reform that can really close the 2035 gap, which means maybe the policy design or the market design, the private sector or the public sector. What exactly the tool or the solution you think we can achieve the climate action? Floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, the most obvious one that's been a thread through all of the discussions is around the policy environment for the approval of some of the renewable energy resources. And in Australia and in many countries, we've seen offshore wind in particular being having those significant barriers. So that clearly needs to be solved, but I might leave it for my colleagues to talk with more information about that. I think, from my point of view, I still want to fly the banner of the distributed energy resources and consumer energy resources. And they're technically possible, they're economically sensible. The only thing that holds them back is the policy environment and the political will to roll them out. So we need to make sure that the electricity markets, the incentives, the investment is all in favour of supporting maximum efficiency, by energy efficiency I mean, not market efficiency. So maximum efficiency of the energy system, the energy productivity that we heard from other speakers about. And secondly, flexible demand in order to integrate more renewables into the grid. Because of obviously the variable nature, but the known variable nature of solar energy, we can have it's very easy for us to use predictive systems to make sure that we can have flexible demand to make up for that diurnal variation. And of course, with offshore wind, we provide a rather more base load capacity. But that's a gap in policy to make that happen. And we also know that the investment money is there. Australia itself has over 4 trillion Australian dollars of superannuation or pension funds that it's finding it difficult where to place them. So we know that these are cost-effective things. We know it's cost-effective to do energy productivity improvements, demand flexibility, investment in renewables. So we just need to get those two, the sources of money, the policy, and these technologies and systems together, not just in Australia, obviously, but in all the countries we've been hearing about.
Thank you, Dr. White. Thank you for your sharing. Yes, I totally agree. The technology, money of resource, source of money, and also the policy is supposed to be put together. And next, I would like to invite Mrs. Kim. From your institutional perspective, here's the question. How would you think we can somehow also achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius under the Paris Agreement, especially with the private sector? Or you are also welcome to share your idea or experience from the Korean perspective. So, floor is yours.
Thank you for the question. I would like to give you a little bit of a context in South Korea. First, given Korea's economy is really based in manufacturing and exports. So when we see the energy mix in South Korea, the most of our electricity comes from fossil fuels, which is 100% imported from the abroad. That means that our industrial competitive comes from imported resources. Then it is really difficult to find an independency in our economy. So I think renewable energy is important in terms of environmental effect, but also as economic aspects. It's really crucial to have an energy security, but also economic security in terms of we can be very independent in terms of our energy production. And our new government established a new ministry of Ministry of Environment and Energy. But I think they cannot be just remain as a symbol of Korea's new administration. They have to make it a new. They have to make it underground. And the minister of the ministry, the minister shared the goal of deployment of 100 gigawatts of renewable energy, which is mainly will be solar energy and offshore wind. But given the offshore wind takes a lot of time in development and construction, it has to be very large amount of solar power. And in Korea, as of 2023, as well as Japan, we only have like outdated schedule for our status number of our solar deploy capacity, which is very low, and then we have to be more bold and initiative in our framework policy and mitigation of, for example, separation regulation, separation distance regulation mitigation. So, yeah, I think the reform of policy framework and getting rid of our unnecessary regulation for more deployment of solar energy is very crucial for our very ambitious goal of our new administration and ministry.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. King. I also remember that just we had the APEC, a very high-level meeting a few weeks ago. They also emphasized this renewable path, this renewable policies is very important, especially not just for Asia, the Pacific, but for the global every countries. So next, I would like to invite Mika. So because I really be very inspired by your presentation, and I remember one of your slides, you show all this kind of how can four countries for today, Korea, Australia, Japan, and Taiwan, we can rebuild or we can have resilient, low carbon, clean energy supply chain? Any opportunity or challenges would you want to share?
Yeah, that's right. I showed you is just a kind of my image to build up the supply chain in the worldwide, I mean Asian region, because the current situation is one country like Korea, Taiwan, Japan want to imbibe the whole supply chain of the offshore wind in one country and competing each other. But probably there is a appropriate law for each country to adapt such supply chain and then develop together. And then while the pace of decarbonization differs across the region, so the collaboration is quite essential, I think. And even for the offshore wind development, I have to say, in the northern part of Japan, where the huge offshore wind potential we have, that there could be a kind of a limited seasons that we can have the construction of the offshore wind, because she will be very cold and then very wild. So the probably in the late spring and the summertime could be suitable for the construction of offshore wind in the northern part of Japan. So, but if we just see the widely, like Taiwan, probably the whole year you are appropriate to construct the offshore wind. And then that if we could see the kind of a vessels management, almost all the kind of functional vessels for the construction of the offshore wind, including the installing the subsea cable, that is accumulated in Europe. And then we have to use it in a very wise way and in very effective way. So that maybe Korea, Taiwan, Japan, that rotate to use that vessels. And the current system is quite difficult because especially Japan has a very severe cabotage regulation, so that not a kind of a foreign national base vessels cannot be, you know, within Japan to work. So and then it's have the law to do so. because for the developers and then wind turbine makers, at least annual production is needed. So it cannot be sometimes difficult for the only one country to bear that 3 to 5 gigawatt basis. So the Korea, Japan, Taiwan can share that kind of amount of installation. Then it could be a good resource of collaboration. That is one thing that I just thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Mika. Thank you for very interesting and very supportive suggestion. So last but not least, I would like to invite Dr. Zhao. The question for you is, as you mentioned, Taiwan is the hub of the technology. We have TSMC, NVIDIA, data center, all those energy-consuming industry. So how about this kind of AI and data center for its electrification demand? What the portfolio of the demand-side resources that we can best maintain the reliability, accountability, and eventually reduce the dark carbon emission? Floor is yours.
Hello. Okay. So when we think about the AI, there's a lot of I would say the first thing is that we should be terrified by the potential exponential growth of the AI in terms of the electricity consumption, because there's a lot of the data center developer already use that as an excuse to delay their net zero commitment. But we see there's a lot of it was kind of like overhype in terms of those the issue. And then when we look into the IES report around energy and AI, they had to do an analysis that if you are just set out some requirements in terms of the energy efficiency for the data center, the share of in terms of the contribution for the to the global greenhouse emission from the data AI center can be kept around 1% for the next 10 years. Although for some countries the share will be much higher, but globally it will be only around 1%. So we need to thinking about another aspect is that when we during the COP, the Brazil they actually UNFCCC, UNESCO and the Brazil government they launched a institute called the AI Climate Change Institute. They are talking about how can we apply the AI in terms of some beneficial application for the climate change. And we also read that there's some study by LSE, by the System IQ, the research team from UK. They say that there's a potential that if we apply AI in terms of the gray management, demand side flexibility, those kind of options, the mitigation potential for AI by year 2035 is around 10% for those kind of energy sector, industry sector, and the food sectors. So we have to focus on this kind of potential advantage for the AI, and to learn from what we heard during the COP30. There's an AI Climate Change Institute try to make the users of AI can try to apply the function of AI to the something that was be good to the plan. So that will be a very important thing when we thinking about the role of AI in terms of the energy transition. Yeah. But I just want to say that we also need to keep the AI company accountable for those kind of when they say because sometimes we heard in Taiwan, the Jason Huang is like a rock star in Taiwan. So when he come to Taiwan, when he was asked by some journalists about how do you thinking about electricity consumption from AI, he just saying that if you can use more AI, you can save more energy. This is a statement without any kind of evidence-based analysis. So we should also hold them accountable in this kind of regard in the energy transition issue. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Zhao. Thank you for sharing the perspective from Taiwan. So we still have about 15 minutes. And this time, I would like to open the floor because I got the information from Dr. Zhao. All you are the energy expert, so you probably would like to ask each other question in a more critical and precise way. So maybe I could invite Dr. Zhao, or maybe we can open to the floor first. Anyone from here, you would like to ask any question about the renewable energy, about how different perspectives from Australia, Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. But sorry, only English, huh? We don't really speak Portuguese. Or maybe some of you speak. Okay. So, if any of you have the question, you can raise your hand and let me know. If not, then okay, please.
Hello, I'm Chen Yan from DSAT. It's a think tank also focused on energy security about Taiwan. And I want to ask Dr. White and Mika and also Mr. Kim, Miss Green, Kim. Because we are currently know that Australia is currently constructing interconnector, means submarine cable cable, connecting Singapore and Darwin. Yeah, it connected over 4,300 kilometers to connect to export renewable energy from Australia to Singapore. So it had been already echoing, like Ms. Mika already mentioned, that currently the South Asia and Pacific area countries already has some collaboration on energy transition to help connect South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and Australia together to make this climate target could be achieved by 2050. Yeah, it's the first question. Yeah. And the second question I want to ask Ms. Mika, as you mentioned in your slides, that lots of solar energy will be curtailed by because the overcapacity of solar energy at noon. So I'm wondering that why Japanese people will still support nuclear power as the base load, even though that there's lots of renewable energy will be waste or will be curtailed, and they still have supporting huge amounts of energy, nuclear energy, with several disadvantages like nuclear waste. Yeah, here's my question.
So, question for Mika and Dr. White. Okay, so Dr. White, please.
Just to quickly respond to the question about the undersea or international cables. There's been, as you know, a couple of live proposals, more than one, from Australia for large-scale renewables in the north of Australia to export via cable to Indonesia and then to Singapore. For a long time, I was not really a great fan or supporter of this idea because I just thought the economics would not stack up. You know, when you get to the point where the cost of transport start to outweigh the cost of generation, it's very hard then to reduce the cost of transport. And as you know, and as I think Mika was suggesting, there are some significant logistical difficulties with the construction. However, my views have somewhat changed over the years, partly because the cost of renewables has become so low. I mean, we should have predicted, but no one did predict exactly how low they would go. And so there is potential, and I think it should be investigated, the economic benefits, the security benefits that I know you're interested in, and the resilience benefits, and the international cooperation benefits could be quite large. So I think we should, and indeed it's an active proposal in Australia for that proposal, and it's just the difficulty of getting the ships that lay the cables and service the cables. So I wanted to also flick that and ask Mika and the others, we haven't particularly mentioned the other big constraint, which is workforce. I absolutely agree with Mika. I think there's an opportunity for some regional cooperation of the kind that you just described in your fantastic diagram. But one of the areas that I think we should be cooperating in is workforce, skilled workforce, we did some analysis for the workforce required for the renewable strategy for Australia, and just the offshore wind requirement, the offshore wind proposals alone would require more welders, people welding the equipment, than we have in Australia. So let alone the more the engineering requirements and the other workforce. So I think we need to collaborate regionally for that reason alone, and I think the possibility of undersea international cables is one that we should continue to investigate.
Thank you, Dr. Boy. And next, Mika.
It's fine. I think that some of you, maybe a few of you know that our organization has been promoting the Asia Supergrid concept. That is an interconnection that with China, Korea, Japan. Even we had MOUs with the major transmission company in those countries, like, you know, State Grid China, Korea Electric Power Corporation, and even at that time Russia was in. Actually, Rosetti was in. So we are the big supporter for the interconnection, at least in East Asia region, and we did so many studies. But the difficulty is not the logistic, but the political situation, geopolitics. And then China was interested in, Korea was interested in, even Russia was interested in, but Japanese government totally not interested in such idea. So that was the very biggest difficulties for us to implement that idea. But actually, that idea is now shifted in the Southeast Asian countries, and centering the UN SCAP, and then the GGI, the Green Grid initiatives that are formed by the UK government and the Indian government. They are totally implementing the new strategy for especially the Southeast Asian interconnections. And that is the idea, has been told for, you know, the older than Asia Supergrid concept, but it wasn't going well. But suddenly it is going well because of the renewable energy that, as Professor White said, like renewables is now becoming cheapest energy source. And then most of the countries want to have the new renewables in the country because of the new kind of a private sector wants to use such electricity from renewables. So even the Singapore, country of Singapore, that was not so much favor for the, you know, the Malaysia, but now they are interconnecting with Malaysia to introduce that renewable electricity resource from the country. That it's because that Singapore government wants to keep the kind of the companies that who want to use the renewable electricity. So that is developing. So why not in East Asia? That is my question. So it's quite possible. And then cable cost is declining. But again, I have another question. Since the battery storage system is so much cost, I mean, the cost of storage is really declining, why we should have the big transmission system. That is, so maybe that we need everything. We need everything interconnected. So that is a thing. And then question for me was, excuse me. And then I have to say, the Japanese people is not favoring the nuclear power. Industry, some industries, and the Japanese government wants to maintain the current power system, especially constructed by, consists from the incumbent utilities. They have anyway, some numbers of nuclear power plant in their region, each region. So they want to support and then prolonging their life, I mean the company's life to support nuclear power. So nuclear power is not the issue of energy. It's an issue of business, politics, and money thing, I have to say. Because nuclear is expensive to maintain. And then if you think of the new nuclear power plant, like a SMR or the new construction of a nuclear power plant, it's enormous money is needed. So it's not about the energy or the cost, it's just the politics that I have to say.
Thank you, Mika. Thank you very much. And maybe I can take one more question. Yes, the gentleman. Thank you.
Curious to know what you see as the role of hydrogen in meeting renewable energy targets and energy needs overall, and also battery storage on a large scale to deal with peaking issues.
So any specific aspect, or maybe I can invite like Mrs. King, you would like to respond? The hydrogen, battery and hydrogen.
I think in Latin America, especially, hydrogen is very powerful in this region. But honestly, in Korea, we are using the half of Korean Peninsula, which is very small, indeed. And in our territory, 70% of our land is mountain, and almost 20% is agricultural land. And only we have like normal land, some kind of 10%. So honestly, hydrogen power is not very applicable given the geographic feature we have in South Korea. But I've seen very interesting that in Latin America, especially, actually this week we had an interview with the former minister of energy of Uruguay. They have a lot of hydrogen energy within their renewable energy mix. So I think it's all about all different countries has different geographic feature, and then they can just adjust and they can just understand well for the which renewable energy resource is applicable and it's effective to deploy in their country. I think energy planning, a little bit different story, but energy deployment planning is so important from that perspective, I would say. If there is anyone?
Because Japan is famous for hydrogen society concept that I have to say. I mentioned about ammonia, CCS, and something like hydrogen in my presentation, and then with a negative word. But it does not mean that I'm denying all those three technologies. Maybe we need CCS in 2045, or of course that we need hydrogen and ammonia after 2040 or something, but not now. Because hydrogen is not the energy, it's a kind of an energy product. You have to make hydrogen from somewhere else. It's not in the underground, and then if you just dig and the hydrogen will come up, it's the fantasy. So the cheapest way to produce hydrogen is the renewable energy source, the electricity, and an electrolyzer, and then you can make it from the water. So if you have the very cheap renewable energy sources, like in Australia, and then now the Middle East countries are claiming, so then you could have probably the cheaper hydrogen, clean hydrogen in your country. But that is still, I have to say, very precious, some like expensive energy product. So it has to be used for the hard-to-abate sector, such as heavy industry, not the kind of a vehicle, not a train, or something like that. You have to use it very in a precious way. So that is hard-to-abate sector. So we have to seriously think about hydrogen's role, but at the same time, it cannot be applied for the usual vehicles or something like that.
And any feedback from Dr. Zhao or Dr. White?
Yeah, okay, so I will go first because Australia talking about the hydrogen. Yeah, because in Taiwan we expect that we can import a lot of the hydrogen from the Australia, but the challenging thing is that we did not design a good application for when we import those hydrogen. We are trying to put that into the gas turbine, just to use it to generate electricity. We want to use that to power the hydrogen bus, but actually the electric bus was already kind of like a commercial available all the time. So our team, when we talk about the hydrogen issue, we are talking about we should focus on the we should plan our policy of the hydrogen strategy based on the hydrogen application later. So which kind of the application should be prioritized, not just thinking about we can use hydrogen as a hype. And then we also have a kind of like misconception from the government. They are saying that okay, the wind is not good and the solar is not good, so let's go for the hydrogen fuel cell. But that solves nothing. That solves nothing. So that's what we are seeing in Taiwan right now. When we talk about hydrogen, there's a lot of hype and the misconception around that.
Thank you. And Dr. White?
Not much more to add. I agree 100% with Mika and what others have said. But yeah, I think hydrogen has lost the original race in transport. I think batteries have won, the price coming down and right through to heavy vehicles as well. So there's probably no role there. Certainly no role for burning it. There's such a waste, and there are so many other alternatives. But I agree with Mika that it's the hard to abate sectors, the fertilizer, chemical, mineral processing, where its chemical properties are being used rather than its thermal properties.
Thank you. And I think because the time is limited, thank you for all your very inspiring sharing and also the questions. But last but not the least, I would like to take this 5 minutes more. Because all of you are energy expert, so if you can provide one sentence in which we can just assume directly send to Blue Zone, to those decision makers, and put that into the consensus of COP30. So what kind of one sentences you want to say? We put that into the official document, just assume. So you have this power, whatever you say will write down by the decision maker. So what that sentence supposed to be? So maybe we start from Dr. White, since you hold the microphone.
To liberate the finances that are available to invest initially in distributed energy resources.
Thank you. And how about Mrs. Kim?
If you want to make your ambitious goal workable, just do it workable on the ground.
Thank you. And how about Mika?
Yeah. The COP government has already said that this is a COP of truth, and then also that we do not need to have the time for the discussion, but we need to implement. So the implementation with the collaboration, and then of course finance has to be viable for the decarbonized energy transition.
Thank you, Mika. And Dr. Zhao.
Yeah, because this COP talking about disinformation or misinformation around climate change issue, I want to highlight that if we can see any disinformation of the energy transition should be recognized as a kind of like a DOT for the future. Yeah, that will be a very important message. I want this COP can be delivered. Yeah.
Thank you. We collect all those messages and send to Blue Zone, but no guarantee they will put that in the document. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. And should we have the group photo? If we have this honor, thank you.